We talk about the LA Kings' recent coaching change, what GM Rob Blake had to say about it, and look ahead to the second half of the season with Russell Morgan of Hockey Royalty on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We would love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And of course, we're on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. Also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 17 years and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. Use Sleeper's terms of use for details. Well, we have not had an interview in a while, and that's because of all the things been going on with the LA Kings, all the games they've been playing. But you know, if you watch this show or listen to this show, I do like to bring in other voices from time to time to talk Kings hockey. And with that, we welcome back to the show, friend of the show from Hockey Royalty, and that is Russell Morgan. You can follow him on X or Twitter at NHL Russell. Hey, Russell, how are you?
What's up, Eddie? Thanks for having me on, man.
No, thanks for coming on. A lot's going on, as you well know, with the LA Kings. I was on the Locked On NHL show on Monday, and if anyone missed it, you can go check that out. But I was asked a very obvious question: what has happened to the LA Kings? Now, not that anyone needs a refresher course, but one of the top teams in the NHL for the first month and a half, 27-4, 44 points, sixth most in the NHL. And since then, 3-8-6 for 12 points over that span, 29th out of 32 teams in the NHL. I didn't have a great answer for that question. Do you have a good answer for that question?
Man, I feel like if I had a good answer for that question, I might be the next head coach.
Yep.
It seems like that's really the big mystery right now. It's tough because you look at a lot of the games that have been lost. They're right there, right? I mean, there's been multiple games where they've had leads that they've given up, overtime losses, shootout losses, and a lot of the underlying metrics point to them being capable of winning a lot of those games, but just never came to fruition. So I think it's a definite mystery as to why the Kings are trending the way they have been, and probably led to the big changes that I'm sure we'll be talking about.
Yeah, I kind of said it's been kind of a combination of things, that the depth scoring we saw right earlier with the four lines all contributing kind of dried up. Cam Talbot has certainly struggled towards the latter part of this kind of streak. Is that how you feel? And then I think it kind of snowballs when you lose your confidence and you're starting to press. Do you think is there anything I'm missing there? Is there something you would add to that?
No, yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I feel like all those factors, and then you kind of combine that with maybe the frustration kind of boiling over in the locker room a little bit. And not to say that there's been growing kind of separation between the players or whatnot, but you can definitely sense it a little bit, especially after Drew Doughty's comments after the Buffalo game. So it's just frustration after frustration from how these games are being lost. And I'm sure there's players that probably aren't adhering to some of the systems that make this team successful. And that's probably piled on to the list of growing frustrations for players that do think that they need to adhere to those systems. So, I mean, yeah, like you mentioned with the goaltending kind of struggling, lack of goal scoring. I mean, overall, just every aspect of the game just seems to have gone off the deep end a little bit here.
Now, you were at the Rob Blake press conference on Monday. I definitely want to get your opinion on that, being there in person. You and I had a nice conversation before the Kings-Rangers game, and we talked about a coaching change. I had told you that I kind of thought they should have done it already, and I know you were saying if they lose to the Sharks, they got to make a change, if I remember what you said, and they lost to the Sharks. So I guess, what did you feel about ultimately the move to dismiss Todd McLellan and kind of the timing of it?
The timing of it happening during the All-Star break, I guess it just makes a lot of sense. For me personally, I thought I was just really actually surprised. Not necessarily surprised that the firing happened, but surprised that this management group went along with that decision. I didn't see them ever separating from Todd McLellan, and I thought maybe the win in Nashville really gave him a little bit of a cushion. But like you said, that those games against San Jose and even the Nashville game that they played at home, and then the Buffalo game, like all those games just were so frustrating losses. Just watching from a fan standpoint, you could just kind of sense it with the players and the coaching staff too. So, and even in the win that they got in Nashville, I mean, they didn't play well at all. They really got lucky to come out with 2 points behind a great performance by David Rittich and some goalposts that were hit from Nashville. So, yeah, it's the timing of it. I guess it makes sense, right? I mean, you only have 3 wins and 17 losses. Not a lot of coaches are going to survive that, but I would say I was surprised that the management group actually went through with it. So it's definitely probably the right decision, and we'll see how they tread on going forward.
And I know, I work in sports talk radio, so I hear a lot of fire the coach talk from fans of all kinds of sports, right? It's the easy thing to do. And I get it. You can't fire all the players. It is the easiest thing to do that can have potentially the biggest impact. But of course, a lot of times when fans or people will say that to me, my response is, well, who are you going to replace them with? It's easy to fire the coach, but who are you going to bring in that's going to make a difference? So along those lines, and I know you and I talked about this in our face-to-face conversation, I had mentioned a few names. Jim Hiller wasn't one of them. He's being promoted from assistant coach to interim head coach for the rest of the season. So what was your reaction to that?
At first it was surprising that they didn't bring in a new voice. It seems like it's something that they might need. But the more I think about it, I mean, Jim Hiller kind of is a new voice. He's only been with the team for a little over a season and a half, and he wasn't necessarily part of the original group that the team brought over with Todd McLellan. So I guess he kind of is a new voice, even though he's been with the team a little bit. And the more I think about it too, is all this points to Rob Blake obviously being the next one on the hot seat if things don't turn around. So for his management, the management, whoever's above him, the leadership group above him, I'm not sure that they would have given him the opportunity to bring in a new name and give more money to that. Because if things don't turn around, then he's probably the next one out the door. So you bring in a new name and an outside coach like a Craig Berube that we talked about, or Dean Evanson, I think was the name I mentioned. You bring in that name. Let's say things don't turn around, then what are you going to do then? You're just going to have to get rid of him and then find a new coach, or you stick with that. It doesn't really make any sense there. So for them to go with Hiller, kind of ride out the rest of the season, I think it makes a lot of sense in that standpoint, because it's Rob Blake's hot seat now that he's sitting in.
By the way, there is some news today confirmed. We talked about it on yesterday's show, but DJ Smith, the former head coach in Ottawa earlier this year, got fired. It's been confirmed he now will be an assistant, I guess, replacing Jim Hiller, so to speak, as the other assistant on the bench. So he is coming to LA. I talked to some of our guys for Locked On Senators, and they weren't real high on him as a head coach, but they thought that he was a really, really good assistant coach. They thought it was a positive hire and that he's really more suited for that kind of role. So hopefully he can come in and help out with the LA Kings, as that has been confirmed. We're going to have more with Russell Morgan. We're going to talk about the Rob Blake press conference that he was in attendance at. We'll do that here next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. If you're like me, the Super Bowl is all about getting that good seat on the couch, getting your favorite snacks, and just crashing and enjoying all that is about the Super Bowl. It is basically a sports national holiday. And of course, we'd like you to enjoy it with maybe placing a bet or two that can add to the fun. And FanDuel has so many ways that you can end the season with a W, or one or two or three. You can also bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, of course. But with FanDuel, you've got other prop bets and things as well. What players are going to score touchdowns, how many points are going to be scored, and so much more. New customers can join, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. That's not right. There we go. Hey, there's more with Russell Morgan from Hockey Royalty. Now, Russell, like I said, you were at the press conference. You were out there at the Toyota Sports Performance Center on Monday. And Rob Blake talked with the media about the decision to dismiss Todd McLellan and more. But you kind of touched on this a bit. And there was one question that Rob Blake did not want any part of. And Eric Stevens of The Athletic asked him about, there's other coaches out there. And then Blake kind of cut him off and said, Jim Hiller's our head coach. And he's like, yeah, but did finances play any kind of a role? And then he cut him off again and said, Jim's our head coach. So my take on that is, I think it's fair to speculate, since he didn't answer the question, that he went to management or ownership and said, we need to make a move. Do I have your permission to go out and find another coach? And they said, no, you're going to have to do this in-house because we're paying Todd McLellan $5 million to not coach next year. And we're not willing to bring in another coach. We're going to play $3-4 million a year too. And that might not work, as you said. So would you agree that it's fair to speculate on that? And that's, they basically said, if you're going to make a change, you need to promote somebody within the organization.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when their management above Rob Blake signs off on making Todd McLellan the highest paid head coach in the league, and then all of a sudden you want to make a change at that position, it would be pretty tough to go to whoever's paying or writing the checks to say, hey, we want to now give more money to another big name head coach. So yeah, that's fair to say. And it definitely was a pretty a lot of tension in that room with Rob Blake answering some of the questions from the media. And it makes sense. I mean, it's not one of the best days for him. So I'm sure he didn't want to be there asking or answering the questions that we probably needed to ask. So it makes a lot of sense.
Plus, I also think it's fair, if you're, running this team or overseeing it, that Rob Blake comes to you and says, hey, we're going to make this major trade in the offseason. It's going to be great. And then it doesn't really work out. And now he's like, hey, we're going to give this guy an extension for a year, pay him an extra $5 million. That doesn't work out. And now he's asking to do something again. You can understand why they might say, you know what? We're going to see how it plays out this year. And then we'll figure out who's going to be making these decisions going forward about bringing in new coaches and things like that. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's all about the money and what have you done for me lately? And so they already gave McLellan an extension next year too. So yep. You're giving him another $5 million to pay him to not coach now next year on top of that. So yeah, that'd be a tough sell.
So another interesting question that was asked was about Pierre-Luc Dubois. And the question was basically, if you had to do it all over again, would you do it? Now, I think we all knew what the answer was going to be, and he said yes. But do you think he really would? If he could go back in time and make that trade again or not, do you think that Rob Blake would make that trade again for Pierre-Luc Dubois?
No, I think so, to be honest with you. And I might be a minority here, but I would too. I have a lot of questions about who he's been playing with and his deployment so far this season. So I'm going to lean on that fence as long as I can until probably the end of the season. And I'll probably make my assumption after that. But I'm really curious to see how his usage goes with Jim Hiller. And obviously we'll be getting Victor Arvidsson back too. So that's a big addition to the forward lineup. So hopefully he gets a better opportunity to produce, because when we first talked to Rob Blake a couple of weeks ago during that midseason press conference, he pointed to his 5-on-5 per 60 numbers still being pretty good, which technically they are, but you're definitely not seeing the effort that you're hoping to see from a player you're paying $8.5 million a year to. So, but yeah, I'm curious to see how this coaching change does. I said it on my show last night that whenever I'm at practice, and the one player I'm always paying attention to is Pierre Dubois, just to kind of see how he kind of interacts with his teammates and the coaching staff. And the coach I always see him talking to the most is Jim Hiller. So I know he's got a pretty good relationship with Hiller. So it'll be interesting to see how he responds to this. That'll be the player to watch, to see how he responds to this change.
I wanted to ask you this, and I'm kind of flipping it in here, but I know you are into analytics, and I have admitted that's a blind spot for me as the old guy, I guess. It's something I haven't really been able to wrap my head around. Is there any numbers analytically that either kind of explains what the Kings have been going through lately, or maybe shows that it's not as bad as it has been? Is there anything analytically that you can give us that you think would be interesting to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So one chart that I've been looking at so far these last 2 weeks is if you go to moneypuck.com and you click on the Kings, for example, and they give you a chart and it kind of lays out the entire season in this one graph. And the statistic I'm talking about is goals for above expected. So with the amount of chances you get, those are goals that you're expected to score. But for the Kings, they're not going in. So obviously you can also look at shooting percentage being another one, because I believe when things were really trending in the right direction early part of the season, they were a top 10, top 15 team in the league in shooting percentage. But now they're one of the bottom teams in the league in shooting percentage. So, and that's also trended to that goals for above expected as well, to be dipping below the mean. So yeah, that's definitely one of the underlying metrics. And it points to, like you said, it points to things being not as bad as they probably seem to be. But I mean, with how the demeanor has been around the team, how these losses have been piling up, it still is pretty bad.
As far as some news that came out of the Rob Blake press conference, letting us know, and you mentioned his name earlier, that Victor Arvidsson is apparently returning to practice on Thursday, which is when the team comes back from the All-Star break. Obviously missed the entire season so far with the second back surgery. Is there reason to be optimistic with him back relatively soon? How much do you think he can impact the roster?
Oh yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if he's back in that first game on the road trip. When I saw him skating just a few weeks ago, in that red jersey just by himself, man, he was humming out there. It looked like it was Victor Arvidsson that we'd seen at 100%. So I know it's going to take him a little while to get acclimated to the team, up to game speed, because you can skate for practice as hard as you can, but it's not playing at a game speed. So it's going to take a little bit of time for him to get used to that. So I'm curious to see how many practices they actually give him. But to hear Rob Blake talk about that he'll be at practice, or they expect him to be practicing with the team on Thursday, that's great news, because then you have the game on Saturday. Don't expect him to play then, but hopefully we see him pretty early on in the after the break here, and possibly on one of the first games of the road trip. Because it's like, let's be real here. He's a 60-plus point player last year, 30-plus goal scorer in his career. That's a big addition to this lineup. And I think we kind of overlooked that at the beginning of the part of the season, especially when they were winning. But when you're going through struggles and you're looking for a little bit more creativity to help with those shooting percentage woes, Victor Arvidsson is definitely a player who can help you there.
Yeah, and I think as Kings fans, we're all hoping that this combination of things will be like the perfect storm to finally get them going, right? You've got the break where everybody can get away, take a deep breath, hit the reset button. You've got the new voice coming in as the head coach, and with Victor Arvidsson coming in as well. Maybe all those things, right, can be just the thing they need to, because we feel like it's not that far away from getting going. And once the confidence gets there, hopefully we can see the team that we've seen for most of the season.
Yeah, man, it feels like a mental thing with this team right now. The team, I've said it a couple times, it's like this team is way too talented to be playing as poorly as they have been, and they just need to figure it out up here in their heads. So stick to the system, stick whatever works to you, but you got the talent to figure it out. Hopefully the lineups maybe improve a little bit. I'd like to see a little bit more of a shakeup there, maybe on the defensive end too. But yeah, you got way too much talent. We've seen this team be 100-plus point per type team last year. I think they can replicate it again this year if they turn things around here. So it's not that far off. I mean, you think about it. I mean, with all the struggles they've been going through, they're still in a playoff spot. And you're kind of thinking about it too. I was looking at the standings and the way they're shaking out. I wouldn't be that disappointed over a wild card spot as opposed to playing maybe Vegas or Edmonton in the first round. So might be more beneficial to get the wild card spot, and who knows, maybe you get Vancouver in the first round. But hopefully not Colorado. But yeah, I mean, Vancouver would probably be a better matchup than Vegas or Edmonton right now.
Well, maybe history will repeat itself with the Kings being an 8 seed and facing Vancouver in the first round. You never know. I know you talked about lineup changes. I definitely would love to get your thoughts on that. We'll do that here next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, we're headed into the stretch run of the NHL season. Kings are hoping to make a playoff push, but regardless of where they are in the standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. It's the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you could win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether players like Austin Matthews or Nathan McKinnon will record more or less than the sleeper projections in things like goals, assists, and with goalies, saves, plus minus, and more. It's not just about the NHL. You can play daily fantasy hockey with other sports too, like the NBA, but you can win 100 times bet on Sleeper when you correctly pick the outcome of 8 player stats. You can win 100 times your money during playing fantasy hockey on Sleeper. Pay attention, nail your picks, and you can start winning big. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availabilities. And do want to remind you, the LA Kings will be back in action. First game after the All-Star break coming up on Saturday. The Edmonton Oilers are in town, 7 p.m. Pacific time. Catch the hometown broadcast of your Kings on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search LA Kings. Russell, I can't imagine that this team won't make the playoffs. You talk about Victor Arvidsson coming back and the break and the new coach. And no disrespect to St. Louis or Nashville or Seattle, but I think you mentioned it. You look at the Kings roster, they have a better roster than those teams. So they're going to get a wild card spot, right? I'm like, I know you and I seem to be optimists. The glass is half full, but even with all the stuff they're going through, I just cannot imagine them not making the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, 3 wins in 17 games, and they're still in a wild card spot. So it can't continue to be this bad, right? So, I mean, that's where we're all hoping for. But I mean, even if they go 500 the rest of the way, I don't know what the math is, but I mean, I don't even see that happening. So I still expect them to. They still have a lot, like their schedule too. You have to look at that. I mean, you go to tankathon.com. The Kings have one of the easiest schedules remaining across the National Hockey League. So there's that to look forward to. You still have a couple games against San Jose, a few games against Anaheim, and a few games, I believe, against Chicago left too on the schedule. So they should win those games. We see how things have been lately, but yeah, we'll continue to be optimists while we look at that.
I'm unfamiliar with tankathon.com. I will have to check out that.
Oh yeah,
it's
website. a great site. Yeah,
all
NFL,
right.
NBA, NHL, they do a great job there.
All right, I will definitely check that out. I know you posted about this on X. It's still hard for me to not say tweet. But you talked about kind of your dream lineup for the LA Kings. I've certainly have talked about it. Is moving Pierre-Luc Dubois to the wing an option possibly just to kind of get him going? Are we going to see more of Brandt Clark? I don't know why they've done this revolving door a little bit. As much as I like Jordan Spence, just who are the other players that could get moved around? So, and Victor Arvidsson obviously coming back. Where is he going to slot in? I'm sure Jim Hiller is going to be asked about this. You'll be out of that press conference, I'm sure, on Thursday. But what is your kind of dream lineup? Where do you see things being shaken up that you think could really affect things going forward positive for the Kings?
Yeah, as far as my dream lineup goes, I like the first line. Totally fine with how they've been playing. Quentin Byfield's probably been the most consistent forward for the Kings all season. So keep giving him top line minutes. Don't change anything there. It certainly seems like he's been elevating the game of Kopitar and Kempe, which is crazy to think about what we think about Byfield in the offseason. So leave that line the way it is. I'm not too keen on separating Danault and Moore. And if Victor Arvidsson is going to be 100% and he's able to play the type of minutes you would normally see from a top 6 forward, get the nice line back together. Get Arvidsson, Moore, and Danault. We've seen those 3 play consistently pretty well in the NHL for the Kings. So get those 3 together. Dubois and Fiala, man, I don't know. Like I know they've maybe had some struggles during their time together early parts of the season, but Dubois was producing. And if that's really what you're kind of looking for, if you're a Kings fan or really just to try to elevate Dubois' game, then points matter. So maybe get those 2 back together. I really like the way Laferriere and Dubois have played. So I wouldn't mind those 3 as a line. And man, I mean, if Lizotte comes back, I know he'll end up being the 4C, which he should be, but you have to figure out a way to keep Alex Turcotte in the lineup, especially with the last 2 games. I know it's still small sample size, but man, the energy that he brought to those 2 games was an energy that we had been missing for the last 2 months from this team. So you have to figure out a way to keep him in the lineup. And then as far as that last lineup, or I guess forward spot goes, you have Grundstrom, Lewis, Jared Anderson-Dolan, Arthur Kaliyev. There's definitely a lot of pieces to choose from. And then on the back end, I don't see Anderson and Doughty being separated. They seem to be a match that won't differentiate with the next coaching group. But as far as the next 2 pairings go, Man, I mean, I don't know why Andres England continues to get playing time, to be honest with you. I know they like to have this physicality in the lineup, but it certainly seems like he's been more of a detriment to the lineup more than anything, with the amount of negatives in his plus minus of late. So maybe you pair Gavrikov with Jordan Spence, who seems to they've played pretty well in their short time together. And then, hey, if you're looking to get a little bit more offense like this team probably needs, get Clark and Roy together in the third pair, switch Roy to the left side, switch Clark to the left side. I don't really care, to be honest with you. I just want to see some more offense from the defensive blue line. And I think the best way to do that is try to figure out to get a way to get Jordan Spence and Brian Clark in the lineup at the same time.
All right, Russell, great to talk to you again. Good stuff. Looking forward to seeing you out there at crypto.com arena and watching. Hopefully the Kings have some success here in the near future. Again, that's Russell Morgan from Hockey Royalty. You can follow him on X at NHL Russell, part of the Hockey Royalty crew. Check out their podcast as well. Russell, we got through it without my dog barking as well. So all good. I really appreciate it, man. Always good to talk to you, man. Thanks a lot.
You too, Eddie. Have a good one.
All right. Again, that was Russell Morgan, and you guys need to check him out over at Hockey Royalty. And my dog didn't bark. For you everydayers, those of you that listen to watch Locked on LA Kings every day, Thursday, we're going to have a full breakdown of that Jim Hiller introductory press conference. On Friday, we'll have our usual Kings fan feedback show. Lots of things to comment on with that, the Rob Blake press conference, the Jim Hiller press conference, and the return of Victor Arvidsson. Anything on your mind, give us an email. As the Kings get ready to start the second half of the season. The email address, lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. If you're watching on YouTube, always leave your comments in the comment section as well. I know we've had a couple of audio glitches lately, kind of a little bit of a gurgling sound. I apologize for that. Again, sometimes you just do the show and you don't know as far as technical issues. I've kind of disconnected and reconnected everything. Doesn't seem to be much of a rhyme or reason for it, but I apologize for that. And hopefully that will not be an issue going forward. Stay connected with us on social media. We are on X, Twitter, Instagram at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you on Wednesday. And as always, go Kings, go.